Hi guys, welcome everyone. My name is Vera and today I'm going to show you how to paint a super fun blue daisy box. So this one is a useful piece of art. Oh, this one is a little bit stuck, but it is a useful piece of art because you can use it to put your jewelry or maybe some small art supplies, I don't know, gardening seeds, whatever you want to put in it. It's quite useful. We thought it would be fun to make something. It's not just acrylic on canvas, but acrylic on, something else. And this is what happened. So I'm going to be doing this on exact same box that I just found in Dollarama, so basically a local dollar store here. Again, super useful. You can do just the front, or you can also continue this pattern on the sides, the top, the bottom, and the back. The only thing I would recommend, probably do it one thing at a time. So do the front first, and if you wanted to continue onto the sides or the back or the top and the bottom, do it one section at a time. So let this section dry, then move on to the next section. Don't do them all simultaneously because it's going to be a little bit difficult. I mean, for the background, you can. For the background, if you wanted to, you could do front, top, sides, just not the back, right? Because it needs to be resting on something. But generally, I would probably still recommend doing it one section at a time versus, trying to get the whole thing done right away. And we are literally going to ignore any of those separations. So do you see all those lines in between, all the cracks, all the openings? We're literally going to ignore it like they don't exist. We're going to paint over them as if it was a solid piece, and then if they get a little bit stuck, you can always just grab a knife and cut a paint a little bit and they will open up no problem. So that is the easiest way to do it versus, working around them, and the result would be the best this way as well. If you don't have box like I do, that's no problem. You can use any box. I'm sure your local dollar store, craft store has a variety of boxes to choose from, or you can even use this design for a little birdhouse or something similar. Honestly, it's entirely up to you what you're going to paint it on. I am just going to be instructing it according to a wood surface because this is a wooden box. So, and I recommend, if you painted with us before, try something useful. Paint it on something else. So again, birdhouse is a good option. Any box doesn't have to be like a 3-section box like I do. Any kind of box from craft store or dollar store is a really great way to give it a shot as well. All right, so let's go through all our supplies to make sure we have everything that we're going to need here. We're going to need paint. I have all primaries here. You actually, for this particular design, red is very optional because we're going to use a tiny little smidge of it for the B and for the middle parts. And really, we're not going to use straight red either. It's more going to be to make orange. So if you have orange, you can replace that. But also you can do this in any color scheme. You don't have to do it in teals and blues like I'm doing it. If you want to do it in different colors, or if you want to do every single flower different color, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So again, I'm going to be mixing everything from primary colors, and I'll show you how to mix it. But if premix is easier for you, you can just grab your favorite premix colors. I will be using red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And for my particular color scheme, it's important that your blue is on a colder side, such as phthalo or primary blue, just anything that doesn't have any pinker tint to it or purple tint to it, and more has of greener undertone, just because I'm going to be mixing teals out of it and cold blues, so I want to make sure my blue is generally on the colder side. But again, it is a personal preference. If you're using premix, it wouldn't matter. But if you're planning to do teals, this is the better blue. The rest doesn't matter, whatever you have. And as far as brushes, it's always good to use a couple different brushes. So we always recommend having at least 3 brushes, large, medium, and small. So for me personally, I'm gonna do large square, medium square, and a small pointy brush, small detail brush with a pointy tip. So something like that. And that's mostly for the bee, because there are not many other small details. There are some, such as leaves, so you could do that too. But bee is the main small detail here. A little buzzer. All right. And of course, we're gonna need a paper towel or reusable fabric cloth, something just to dab or brush on. If you find it helpful to have if you like things pre-sketched, you can also grab a pencil, and after we're done background, before we move to flowers or leaves or bee, you can pre-sketch them. I personally like freehanding them. I find that they are not that difficult to freehand. But again, if you do have a pencil and you do think it's going to be helpful for you, you can grab it. And that's pretty much it. And guys, this video is going to remain right here, so you don't have to finish this all in one shot. If something comes up, you can't do it all in one shot or today, you can come back and do it any other day. That's totally fine. The video is going to remain right here. It's not going to go anywhere. And with pause options, you can totally go at your own speed. All right, so what I'm going to start with here is the background. So first things first, see if your box is too rough or if it's fine. If it's fine, you don't need to sand it, but if it's a bit on the rougher side, I would recommend just a light sanding to get rid of any little hairs of wood, I guess, like little pieces of wood that may be sticking out, because they might potentially make it a little tricky to paint on. So the smoother your surface, the easier it's going to be for you to paint, A, and B, it's going to be just more pleasant to touch as well. So if you have a sanding paper of some kind, just lightly go over it. I find personally that with stuff that you buy in dollar stores, it usually is a little bit on a rougher side, so it doesn't hurt to sand it a little bit. And again, if you want to be thorough and if it's really rough, you might want to do 2 sanding coats, so basically one with tougher grit and then with a finer grit over it to ensure the smoothest coverage. But honestly, I wouldn't just worry about that too much. That's only if you feel like it's too rough. If it feels fine, go ahead. It's not super needed step. All right, so I'm going to start with my large brush. I'll dip it in the water, and now I am literally going to cover the whole thing in white. Pretty much. And you don't have to be super careful about it. Just, with the large brush strokes, go ahead, cover everything in white. And then we're going to start, almost dipped my paint in my drinking water versus painting. Let's put it further away, my drinking water, because that happens very often. It gets very yucky. See, with just large brush strokes, it almost like what it does, it almost seals the wood in a way and gives you again a better, smoother painting surface, and B, it gives you a better tone, so it creates almost like a white blank canvas, because the wood naturally is not white. It still has that, even if your wood is light, it still has that warmer beige undertone. So this eliminates it. Not fully, because usually acrylic paint tends to be quite transparent. If it's student grade acrylic plus wood is very absorbent material. So the first coat of whatever you put on it, in our case white, it's gonna absorb most of it fairly fast. So it's not gonna look like a pure white. It's still gonna look a little beigey, and that's okay, because again, this is just an underlay. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. All right, so my first layer is done, and now I'm gonna start adding those grays. So you can start by just mixing a very light gray. Again, I'm gonna dip my brush in the water. I'm gonna scoop some white on the side, add a little bit of black, and with this nice light gray, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start flicking. I am flicking my lines vertically. So everywhere I'm gonna add those gray lines, all of that I do vertically. and refill your brush as needed, of course. So the goal is not to cover the whole thing evenly with gray. The goal is to enhance it and add those gray accents or highlight, whatever you want to call them, in certain areas. But I am adding a fair bit of it, like it's not just one or two. I'm adding quite a bit. I find that if your paint is a little more liquid, it's easier to work with, but see for yourself. So I'm watering down my paint just a little bit as I go by just dipping my brush in the water and then going into the paint. Because again, I just find it works better for me personally. And again, imagine that those lines, separations, and all those holes, they just don't exist. Work right over them. So do you see we added quite a bit of gray? Now it's like a two-tone white and gray. Now I'm going to darken up my gray. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a darker gray. I'm going to scoop some white on the side again. Again, add some black this time, just only a little bit of black. So this time you want to have a little bit more black than the first time. Still definitely not a crazy amount of black, but more is fine. And with this, I'm going to do the same thing, but again, more controlled and a little less of it than the first time. So first time, it's almost like I got to practice on it. And now I'm going my final layer of gray. You can put it anywhere you want, but I generally like aiming to leave the middles a bit more empty and kind of add it a bit more to the edges, because those middles are going to be filled with our flowers. And I don't want my flowers competing with my grays. So I prefer to flick them from the top down and from the bottom up versus, going right in the middle, especially when it comes to the darker ones. With the lighter ones, it doesn't really matter. They're fairly light, so anywhere they go, that shouldn't be a problem. But with the darker ones, I prefer to keep them a bit more to the sides, to the edges. All right, this looks really beautiful. I kind of like it. Rustic, good amount of grays, good amount of white. Another thing you could do after that's done, and this is optional, see for yourself if you need it. If you find that your background still doesn't read white and or potentially you added way too much gray, now as a last step on your background, you can go back to your white, take a little bit of white and just flick it towards this middle area. So you're not going to be covering the whole thing this time. Just going to be adding a little bit towards the areas that you want intentionally to be lighter. And you'll see, because this is not the first layer, it's not going to absorb as much. So it's going to read a bit more true to color. So it's going to read a bit more actually white versus what you added the first time. Because as I mentioned earlier, the first time, whatever you add, wood it's very absorbent. So it's going to absorb a lot of it, and it's not going to pop as much. It's not going to look as white as it can. All right, that looks wonderful. I think I'm done my background. I'm quite happy with this. So now I'm going to move on to my flowers. I'm going to wash off my brush. I'll dab it off on a paper towel and I'll put it aside, because for flowers I'm going to be using, let's collect this. I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm not going to be using my large one. So let's put large one aside. Now I'm going to grab my medium. And the first color that I'm going to start with here is going to be a medium teal. So I'm gonna go with something like that, that looks like a medium base teal. And I'm gonna do my flowers in that color. And after that, I'm gonna overlap the dark ones and the light ones over it. But first, we just need to create a base for our flowers. So we'll do it in that color. To make that color, I'm gonna dip my brush in the water and I'm gonna scoop some blue on the side, some white. We're aiming to have like a medium light blue, because again, we're aiming for about medium teal. Not too dark, not too light. And then to this color, you're gonna little by little start adding yellow. So add a little bit, and that may very well be enough. If it wasn't enough, add more and so on. This is more than enough. Oh yeah, that's beautiful actually. That looks quite similar to this color that I was aiming for. So I'm gonna stick with it. This looks nice. It's nice aqua color. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna position one flower here, then a little one here and one here. So I'm gonna do 4. If you want to simplify, do 3, 1 per section is easier. All my flowers, as you can see, are different in size because I like variety. I like that they don't look the same. If you want them to be the same and more to have a repetitive, let's say this 1, 2, 3 exact same, or exact same in size and shape but different in colors, that's an option too. But again, I personally like variety, so I'm just going to do them all different intentionally. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick it, this color, from the outside in. I'm going to do the petals in clusters. Do you see cluster petal? Cluster petal. All petals are going to be done in little clusters flicked from the outside in. Cluster petal. All right, so I built this flower out of cluster petals. Great, I'm happy with the size and shape. I'm gonna move to the next one. And I'm gonna do the same thing. So this one I'm gonna make bigger. So again, cluster petal, cluster petal, cluster petal. So this one I made even bigger. And now I'm gonna make a tiny one beside it, so maybe somewhere right here. And the last one, this one is going to be like a medium size. All right, done, done, and done. So that's my first layer of flowers. So now that I have that first layer, I can move on to my darker. So I'm going to do them in 3 colors. I'm going to do the base version, then I'm going to do the darker version, and I'm going to do the lighter version. And then middles are going to have a few colors through. So the middle is going to have super dark underneath it. And then it's going to have some yellow, some orange, and some white. But what I'm going to move next to here is the dark color for my flowers. So what you could do, you could either grab literally just straight blue, not mixed with anything, or if you wanted to do it a little bit fancier, you could take that straight blue and add a little smidge of yellow. Just make sure you're literally adding a little dot of yellow because you don't want to turn it into green. And yellow turns blue into green really fast. The only reason why I'm adding a smidge of yellow to mine is again to maintain that a bit more teal tone to it. So a bit slightly greener undertone versus the undertone it normally comes with. Do you see the difference? This one is warmer, this one is colder. It has that greener teal, aqua, almost emerald undertone. So that's why I added it. That's not a requirement, that's very optional. Just straight blue is totally fine. And now we're gonna start flicking a little bit of that from some of the ends of our flower petals. So do you see? It creates a double tone. And I know it kind of looks black on my painting, but really it's not. It looks beautifully dark blue. If you want, you can add a smidge of white to it just to give it, you know, a bit more visible dark blue tone. Or not. Again, entirely up to you. See what needs to be done. Let's see. Yeah, it's just beautiful dark blue. So we're just going to flick that in a couple areas to darken up certain spots here. And then I'm going to add the same color from the middle. So the whole middle. You know what? I'm going to even make it darker for the middle. That's okay. Let's just do everything else. So to do all the edges here again. I'm going to create another little row of petals right here. All flicking from the outside in, similarly to what we did with our first layer. So just flicking from outside in. See, they start, the layers start appearing, and that's exactly what we want. We want that layering. That's why we're doing it. All right, I'm happy with the amount of the darker blue that I have. Now I'm gonna make the middle, the color for my middle, that's gonna be the darkest. So this one, literally no white added. So I'm just gonna take some blues, a little bit of yellow, again, not too much. You don't wanna turn to a full-on green, but just have that green undertone. And you see how mine is naturally very dark? If yours is not, you can even add a smidge of blue. As you can see, mine is super dark. Only if I take it with a thin layer, you can actually see that it's nice blue, but when it's so concentrated, it almost looks black, which is great. It's gonna work in my favor. And sorry guys, let's make my camera focus. Oh, good. And we're just gonna flick that from the inside out, creating that the darkest spot there. Again, if you need to, you can add a bit of black to your paint there. Just make sure if you do add black, you don't add too much, because black is very powerful color. It will overtake everything really fast if you add a little too much. So just make sure you only add enough. More and more. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, there's still a lighter teal to go here, but I'm gonna actually let it dry up a bit because it's quite wet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it dry, and as that's drying, we can work on our leaves a little bit because we don't have any leaves just yet, so we might as well add them. So I'm gonna do my leaves in two different colors. I'm gonna start with my green of any kind, whatever you want. I will do, I would say medium dark, so it's gonna be not too light, and then I'm gonna do light highlights over it. So I'm gonna start again with my medium brush to mix my paint. I'll do some blue, some white, a little bit of yellow, more of course than previously. We are not trying to make teal, we're trying to make a full-on green, but still it should be a bit heavier on a blue versus yellow, because blue is what gives it the darkness and the depth. So I think this should be a good color for me. If you find that it's too light, you can always add either a bit more blue, or you can even add a tiny smidge of black. Either is fine, but just always remember, if you add black, it's going to dim your color. So you always want to try to make it darker without adding black whenever possible. That way your color stays super vibrant but still gets darker, because once the black is added, it's inevitably gets dimmer. So do you see, I did it darker without any black by just using a bit more blue, minimal amount of white, just like a dot, and appropriate amount of yellow, whatever that may be. And I could actually technically add a lot more yellow, and it's not going to make it much lighter. Yes, it will make it a little lighter, but it's mostly going to give a different undertone. It's going to make it warmer, more grass green, but I like this a bit of a colder side green, so I'm going to keep it this color. And with this, we're going to add our leaves wherever you want them. I'm going to continue using my medium brush because I can. I like this brush, it can handle all of that for me. So I just use the top edge of my brush and I create my leaves. But I would say small brush is definitely a safer choice for leaves. So feel free to use that instead. This is a small brush. It works really well for leaves. So it is entirely up to you. Let me show you with a small brush too. So you see, either is fine. I mean, small is safer choice, unless you're just a pro using your medium, in which case you can. And you can add them anywhere you want. So wherever you feel like there's a hole or gap, you can just plug a leaf in there. And another thing we need to do is we need to connect stem to every single flower. So that's a stem for this flower. I'll put a stem for this flower right here. And for this flower, I'll put a stem right here. This flower here. And then we just plug those leaves in any areas that seem like they're a little too bare and empty and need something interesting there. But also remember, we still have to add a bee, so don't overdo it with leaves. Make sure you reserve a spot for your bee. I'll place my bee at the exact same spot where I originally had it, somewhere around here. So I'm gonna cover the rest of my empty spots with leaves. And notice how all my leaves are a little bit wider where they grow from, and then they get thinner as they go up. Kind of want to add one right here this time, so I may as well. Alright, this looks good. And now I can move to my second color. So to the same color I just used, I'm gonna add lots more white and lots more yellow this time. And you see it creates a nice, much lighter, more vibrant color. And I'm gonna add a highlight to my leaves. You can do every leaf or some leaves, entirely up to you. Alright, and if you want to be extra fancy, now you can go darker too. So for example, I could take blue again, yellow, and then a smidge of black, make even a darker version. Now this is optional. And I could do on the opposite side, just a smidge of that. Alright, looks wonderful. So I'm gonna wash it off, dab it on a paper towel. And my flowers are not fully dry yet, but they're drier, and they're definitely dry enough in my opinion for me to continue. So I'm gonna move to my light teal. If you still have one of those previous teals, you can just add white to it and you'll have a lighter teal. In my case, they're all pretty dry. So I'm gonna start making new one. So again, I'm gonna take some white, some blue. First you start by just making light blue. Similar to before, because as you notice, we always mix just blue base first. And then to that blue base that we like, we add yellow. So it's the same. You start by mixing your light blue base first. And then you add a little bit of yellow to it. And there we go. That's our light teal. Just again, don't overdo it so it doesn't turn into a full-on green. This is quite alright with me. I like the color. Right, and now we're going to add light color flicks. So again, from the outside in, make sure it actually reads well over the areas that you're going to add it in. If it doesn't, you can adjust it, make it darker or lighter. In my case, I like it. I'm actually going to go white over it as well. So this is not the lightest color we are going to have overall. It's just the lightest of the teals. So again, I'm quite alright with this. I like it. It's exactly what I wanted. I'm doing this with a medium brush, but if you prefer small brush, that's okay too. All right, so I'm done my teals. Now I only have whites and yellows and oranges left. So that's awesome. Again, I'm gonna let it dry up for a little bit. And as that is drying up, we could probably work a little bit on our bee, because again, we gotta wait for all the teal colors and greens here to dry up. So for the bee, you can do it without outline, or you can do it with outline. For those of you who are more of outline people, or maybe I should move my bee here. It seems like a bigger spot right there, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Wherever you want to have it, or even here is a good spot, right? Let's put it here this time. So I'm gonna start by putting a body. It looks like a croissant, flying croissant, but with a rounded ends. So you know how croissant has more of a pointy ends? This one has more of a rounded ends. So something like that. And then I'm going to divide it on a couple of strips here. And then I'm going to add wings. This is pretty much what it looks like. I know it's hard to see and it looks a little silly. But that is all right. It will all come together. All right, so now I'm going to make my yellow. So this one, yellow and orange. I'm going to mix it with a medium brush. So yellow is literally just yellow take with a little bit of white. That's your mixture number one. Just yellow and white mixed. Mixture number two is yellow, white, and red. So I'm going to take some yellow, I'm going to take some white, mix them up, keep this one on a yellower side, and then add a tiny smidge of red to give it a little tint of orange. There we go. And I'm going to empty my brush here. I'm not going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using my small one. So I'm going to wash it off, dab it on a paper towel, put it on the side. And I'm going to grab my small brush. And first I'm going to start with my light yellow, and I'm going to go on my bee. I'm going to color in the body of my bee. That yellow flying croissant. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this paint, oops, and I'm going to dot up the middles of my flowers. All right, now that I have this in yellow, I'm going to move to my orange. So I'm going to take a little bit of that orange. First, I'm going to go onto my bee again, and on the lower part of that croissant, I'm going to add the orange. So it looks like my bee is two color now, right? It has a yellow and it has orange. And then with the same color, I'm just going to add a couple more dots to my flowers. So the middles are not all one color, but they have a variety of shades. Just makes it a little bit more interesting. right, and that is done. And now we're gonna let that again dry up a little bit. And as that's drying, we can move back to our flowers and we can add white flower petals on my flowers. And again, you can do this with a medium brush or the small brush. I think I'm gonna stay with a medium. But this time you're just gonna use not, oh, where's my painting part of my brush. So this time just probably don't use blobs of paint, I would say. So let's try. Let's take some white, maybe a little bit less than we would with other colors. And I'm gonna do some flicks from the outside in. So that's one layer. I'm gonna do second layer, the outer layer. So see, I have lots of white now. I'm gonna add some white highlights here. Not every flower needs that much white accents. Some of them can have lots more, some of them can have lots less. And my last one, so this one, I'm actually gonna do different. I'm gonna do it more from the inside out versus outside in. Just again, so not all my flowers look exactly the same, but do what works for you. All right, and now I have lots more white to add. So you could do these dots with, actually, if any of your brushes has a rounded back end, you could do them with that. So I'm gonna start by dipping my rounded back end into white and dotting the middles of my flowers. Then I'll add a couple dots that go on both background and the flower itself. So don't avoid the flower petals, don't avoid the leaves. Like if a dot gets onto the leaf or flower petal, that's great. But also a few just on the background as well. So pretty much everywhere. But not too close to the bee because we're not done the bee yet. Kind of doing this all while to give our bee a little bit more time to dry. All right, that's all done. And now I'm gonna move on to my bee. So what I'm gonna do with the bee is I'm gonna move to black. And I'm gonna take straight black on my small brush. We're gonna add the head here. And a couple of those bee stripes. You see? A couple stripes. Then after that, I'm gonna draw with this lines as small as you can get them. We're gonna draw our wings. See, with the really, really fine lines. going to take some white. Wash your brush, of course, dab it off on a paper towel. And you're going to flick it into the wings. And you can also add just a little highlight of that on the back of the bee to look like a glare. And then using a tiny smidge of more watered down black. So I'm going to take some black and water it down. And with this more like a dirty water, see, super watered down. I'm going to go around my bee and I'm going to add a bit of what looks like a shadow. So it looks like my bee is not, you know, flat on this box, but the bee is sticking out, right? So a bit of a shadow around the bee with that dirty water. And of course, if your bee is positioned in a way that you can see the legs, you can add them. In my case, my bee is not positioned so I can see the legs. The wings are covering it. But if you can see the legs on your bees, you should definitely add them. And ta-da! That's our bee. And my first side is done. So you are officially done on this side. Now you can just let it dry fully. And I mean, of course, if something feels like it's not right, something is missing, you can attend to this. For example, and one option that I want to show you would be correcting everything with white. So basically you could take your middle brush and you can trim your leaves with white a bit and, you know, blend that white into the background because background has a lot of white. So that's one option of something you could potentially do, right? I'm not saying it needs to be done, but that's an option that can be done. If your leaves are too chunky or just don't like them, you can, or if you want to add a little highlight to them, this is something that you could do. Again, super optionally. You can go back to your flowers, you can add an additional color if you wanted to, or you can go back to one of the colors that you already have. If let's say now you feel like you accidentally lost all your dark blue, you can go back to some sort of dark blue and just add a little bit more. It doesn't have to be done in that particular order that we did it. Like if you feel like now is the time to add a little bit more, great, go ahead. You're not going to ruin it by, again, not doing it in that exact order. And just continue working on it until you feel like it's finished. And then put your brushes down and then let this side dry. And you can, if you want to, you can move to the next side. So for example, for the top, I wouldn't recommend having flowers there because if you do flowers all around the sides, it doesn't make sense to do flowers on the top because where are they going to be growing from, right? They can't grow from here because then you'll have to extend the stem. So I would say if you do the top, I would just do the plain background and maybe add a couple bees if you wanted to. Yeah, for the sides you could add flowers. For the back, you could definitely continue the same design. So basically just wrap it all around. But for the bottom and the top, I probably would just add the background color and maybe a couple bees on the top. And that is it. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little fun tutorial, and I hope you have a nice, useful piece of art that you can do something with in your house other than just look at it. Something useful, use it for something, again, art supplies, office supplies, hair ties, whatever you're into, seeds, yeah, whatever you guys into. Feel free to use it for that, even spices, I don't know, something. Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you again next time. Bye everyone.